Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling. Thank you so much for watching. And I want to thank my very special guest on this episode. He is one half of an awesome Van Halen podcast called Dave and Dave Unchained, Mr. Dave Criblez. Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you, bud?
I'm doing great, Dave. Thanks for taking some time out to doing this. Of course, the reason we're doing this is because as this airs, it is not a year to the day, but 5 years to the day since the world lost Mr. Edward Van Halen, King Edward, as I call him a lot of the time. And so we're talking about what has come out for Van Halen stuff and related stuff in that time since Eddie passed away and the impact that the music has. And Dave's got a lot of notes made about a lot of other cool things that aren't necessarily officially released things, but because the Van Halen camp, a lot of the time seems to move very slowly or not at all in getting things out, especially things that as fans we know is out there. We know could be put out and just doesn't seem to come out. So Dave, I'm not sure where we really want to get started, but I mean, like as you know, we were saying before I started filming, Van Halen put they stopped touring in 2015 and they put out the Live in Tokyo concert, and then there was a long gap between anything official coming out. So unless I'm mistaken, the first new Van Halen anything to come out wasn't until 2023, and it was
Mm.
this box set, which I've got the CD version, and this is all of the Hagar era
Right,
studio albums.
right.
But I mean, that's 8 years
Yeah,
since the last thing that Van Halen put out, 3 years since Eddie died.
right.
Why do you think there's been these long gaps between anything being
It's
coming out?
it's really incredible because Van Halen is such a huge band and yet very little catalog. If
Yeah,
you get, I mean, you think about the big bands in our life, right? Like Zeppelin or Aerosmith, AC/DC. These guys have massive catalogs. And I'm not just talking about the studio albums, I'm talking about ancillary stuff like live albums, box sets, greatest hits, that kind of thing. I don't know the particulars, but I think Van Halen has control over what gets released, and they are very stringent about what they officially put out. They have been very difficult about putting out anything other than a studio album, and that usually takes a long time. Now, we know the band no longer exists. And very often, when you have a band member, especially someone as integral as Eddie passing away, it's like floodgates open. I mean, look at Prince right now.
yeah.
Right now, Prince, his estate is releasing tons of stuff and doing extended editions. And Prince was the tightest on his catalog,
Yeah.
but his estate, I guess, which is made up of his family, is releasing all kinds of extensive things. But it is a battle, I think, internally. I can't speak of it officially, but there's just something inside me that says there's a lot of a quiet rumble going on between the powers that be and Van Halen and the family and stuff like that about what gets released and what doesn't. Anything that has the Van Halen official label on it seems to be a real problem. And there's been way more push for the Hagar era Van Halen since Eddie passed. And it actually sort of makes sense considering that Sammy's out there touring with Michael. Sammy's out there playing these Van Halen songs. I mean, Mike and Sam are the ones who are really pushing that legacy forward. Alex is not performing. Gary is back with Extreme. Eddie's no longer with us. And Wolf is gone on to do Mammoth. And, Dave is doing his thing. But, it really is Sam and Mike who are giving out the Van Halen show. I mean, Dave's doing his thing. It's a little goofy in a way, the what he's doing right now. But Sam is delivering a show. I mean, the show he put on with Kenny Arnoff and Joe Satriani and Mike is phenomenal. I mean, they're doing a great set list. The songs are really being treated with pure justice by Joe Satriani and Kenny Aronoff are really filling in for the Van Halen brothers and doing a great job. You know, those two are unbelievable consummate musicians who have gone out of their way to learn those music parts, but also incorporate their own personality into it. So it's interesting how things fall, and it really has given a revival to some of the Van Hagar catalog, which doesn't get celebrated as much.
Well, you're absolutely right because I mean, up until then, how many times have they reissued those those six studio albums, the first six albums? I mean,
Uh,
they're classic albums, but as
yeah.
fans, how many times do they expect us to buy them, especially when they keep putting them out with no extras?
Yes.
Nothing.
No.
No
Yeah. No
no
extras at
live
all. Yeah.
stuff, no
Yeah.
rehearsals,
Right.
no embryonic versions of songs. That's one thing you mentioned Led Zeppelin. I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness. You've got just about every step of the way for a lot of the Zeppelin songs from the very first idea, and they just give it a
Yeah.
silly working title. And I mean,
Well, it.
if Led
Yeah.
Zeppelin can do it, you know what I mean? Like, what's stopping Van Halen from giving the fans like that, just that little bit extra of
Well,
extra content?
it's very simple. Is that when Led Zeppelin did it, Jimmy Page himself was behind it.
Yeah,
Jimmy was putting in the effort. Jimmy was signing the papers allowing it to happen. He was taking control of it. He was overseeing and producing everything. So, you know, Jimmy has a very strong interest in preserving the legacy of Led Zeppelin. There's no one in Van Halen that is from the Van Halen family that has that interest.
yeah,
Um, Both Eddie and Alex, whenever asked about catalog stuff, say, you know what? We're more focused on the future. We'd rather make a studio album. Blah, 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 blah. Interesting. Now, when the best of came out in 1996,
hmm
that was kind of pushed on them and say, hey, we can make some quick cash here. And that's really why they did it, is
yeah,
because they could make some quick cash. And that, believe it or not, best of, which was sort of a hodgepodge because it was half Hagar and half Roth. I mean, if you're going to do a best of, do volume one and volume two, best of Roth, best of Hagar. Why they mixed it up, and they never did a volume two. If you look at volume one, it's clearly missing particular songs that you knew that would be on there, both in the Hagar era and in the Roth era. So it screams for a part two. In fact, I believe that a part two existed and it sat on the shelf. But
yeah.
that sold a lot of copies. I mean, that
You,
was really a hot seller.
yeah, you notice something about. I mean, I remember, of course. I mean, look at my shirt. I mean,
Right.
I'm a huge Hagar fan and a huge
Yeah.
fan of Van Halen with Sammy, like the
Right.
Dave stuff too.
Yeah.
But I saw them on the Balance tour. I thought they were great, and I was
Fantastic.
really disappointed
Mm.
when it that came to an end. It came as a shock to me.
Yeah.
And then, watching Dave on the MTV Awards, he was such a buffoon.
Yeah.
I was just hating on Van Halen, but like a fan, that best of Volume One comes out, and it's like, well, I got to buy it.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I got to buy it because it's got humans being on it, right? And I thought that Can't Get This Stuff No More was okay, but I
Yeah.
really liked Me Wise Magic. I
Yes.
really liked
Me
Me
too.
Wise Magic, and I remember thinking, okay, maybe this won't be so bad. Sammy will be back to putting albums out. Van Halen will be back to putting albums out. And of course, we know that didn't happen.
Right.
Uh, and it's really strange because, yes, I've heard it a million times, we'd rather concentrate on what we're doing now. Well, they weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
They weren't doing
Right.
they frittered away so much precious time.
Oh yeah.
And from 1998 to 2004, there's a studio album with Gary,
Right.
three new songs with Sammy, that did
Right.
not last, and then another 8 years before a
Yeah.
different kind of truth. So where's the future? And there's
Well, yeah.
and that's going to go on. Here
Right.
we are 13 years since a different kind of truth. That's
Yeah.
that's the last Van Halen album.
Yeah.
And you get the feeling that, if Eddie is as prolific and productive as, everybody says that he was, that like Prince,
Mm.
there's probably albums of worth
Well,
of material waiting to be
yeah.
sifted through, but it just for some reason so far, Alex, and I'm assuming that the buck stops with Alex now, he has no interest.
Well, it's very interesting because I understand what you're saying. However, Eddie was not like Prince in the sense that Prince would literally finish whole
You're
albums
right. You're right. Prince could play every instrument and sing and
and
master and
produce
control.
and do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when he's saying he's got
Yeah.
finished albums, he's
Right.
got
Right.
finished albums. He doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
riffs. He
Right.
doesn't have
Yeah.
yeah
Right.
bits of parts.
What Eddie is the see, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Eddie. The most interesting thing about Eddie is Eddie is sort of a mad scientist, or was, I should say, a mad scientist. He's a genius. We know this.
Yeah.
Unbelievable guitar player. Any guitar player will tell you there's something extra about him that goes beyond most guitarists. Like he just has this extra feel, this extra bone in his hands or whatever that is just different. He has a whole different plane. Anyway, the way he worked, believe it or not, with Dave is almost exactly the same way he worked with Sam, even though Dave and Sam are totally different guys and
Right.
write differently and everything. And their music was different. Van Halen with Sam, Van Halen with Dave, in my opinion, two different bands.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
call them Van Halen and Van Hagar. And it's fine. I love them both. I absolutely, I went to every tour with Sam and I met the band, interviewed the band. I enjoy that era just as well. However, they had the same writing way, and the way they used to write is Ed would like come up with really cool, amazing music pieces, and Sam and Dave, when they were working with the band, would listen back to tapes of Eddie's pieces, and they would say, "Oh, I like that hook right there. Let's take that and let's use that for the chorus, and then maybe use this piece that he wrote for the bridge." Now, those are all Eddie's pieces. He wrote them all. And then they would work with the producer in putting a song together. And then they would bring it, once they had a skeleton, they'd bring it to the band, flesh it out with Michael and Alex, and it would become a Van Halen song. Now, here's the interesting thing. The same process with Dave, same process with Sam, both
Yeah.
successful.
Mm-hmm.
When they brought Gary into the band, and this is not Gary's fault, they did not do the same process. What they did was Gary was handing lyrics to Eddie, and Eddie was getting inspired and writing pieces based on Gary's lyrics. Alex and Michael were not very involved in the band at the time. Eddie was, I call that album an Eddie Van Halen side project. It really is. If you view it as an Eddie Van Halen side project, I think you'll almost appreciate it better. This is Van Halen 3 we're talking about. Than as a Van Halen album. It doesn't have a lot of Van Halen flavor. Michael and Alex only play on 3 tracks. So, if you listen to Gary's lyrics, they kind of lay on top of the music. They don't have the groove that Sam had, that Dave had, and Sam and Dave had different grooves.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't fall. It falls. Weird. It's weird.
It's a really interesting thing because diametrically different people, Hagar and Roth, but you're right. They sort of worked with Ed and just intuitively kind of worked with him that way.
Right.
And it is really strange because Gary, Nuno is, almost to the Eddie level of creative guitar, can write not just technically, adept, but catchy songs.
Yes.
But why it didn't click with Gary? Like I in my all honest opinion, I probably like about half of Van Halen 3, and that's after a lot of listening and trying to like it. But you are absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's a different beast altogether.
Yeah, it is. And I'll tell you why. The answer to your question is Gary and Nuno write together. Mm-hmm. They flow together. They grew up together. Same way with Dave and Eddie. But, Gary's hands were tied a little bit. I think he was also very intimidated. He's coming into a highly established entity that has been proven twice over with 2 huge singers. I mean, the recipe was horrendous for Gary. Gary's a wonderful guy. He's a great singer. He's an amazing performer. I just don't think he was the guy for Van Halen. And to be honest with you, he wasn't even a big Van Halen fan. The funny thing is the two guys in Extreme, which was Nuno and Pat Badger, the bass player, are gargantuan Van Halen fans.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely. I mean, like if Gary is like if Pete Townsend had come to him and said,
yes,
we want you to front the Who, Roger can't do it.
Right. He was a Who fan, or a Queen fan.
I always thought that Brian May and Roger Taylor should have tried something with Gary instead of Paul Rogers. That was you talk about a bad fit. And where you got good ingredients all around, but not together.
Paul Rogers, one of the best voices in rock and roll, not for Queen.
No.
I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, don't get me wrong. The guy's crazy talented, an unbelievable legend. Not for Queen.
Didn't have a flamboyant bone in his body.
No.
You know, like it was totally a poor fit.
No.
And we know as Van Halen fans that really know the story, we know not only the reason for the best of, you know, probably a lot of the reason why Sammy was out and why Gary was in. It was Ray Daniels. Ray Daniels managed Van Halen and he managed Extreme. Yeah. And it was a strange few years for Van Halen during that time. I mean, Ray Daniels, I mean, I'm a huge Rush fan, and Ray Daniels was their manager, you know, probably still takes care of their affairs.
Yes.
Did a great job with them, but with Van Halen, he kind of tore them apart.
Well, you know what? What it really is, I think, to be honest with you, I actually used to blame Ray a lot. And then I started studying it. I realized what Ray tried to do. He wasn't the right fit for Van Halen, for sure. The problem was he was the wrong manager for Van Halen. Van Halen needs a different kind of manager. And with Ray Daniels, he found them crazy good opportunities, business opportunities, but they weren't good decisions. And one of them we'll talk about tonight, which was having them open for Bon Jovi. That was an absolute black eye. And I love Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. Is Bon Jovi bigger in Europe than Van Halen? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But
so you just don't do it.
You don't.
Yeah, that was a very strange. That was a very weird thing because you know, I mean, obviously, you know, even on the Balance tour, I saw a huge crowd of people. Like it was an open show, and like I'd never been in a crowd that big before. But they go over to Europe, and they just weren't the international band that Bon Jovi had become.
No. And the thing is that what bothered me on one of these releases we're going to talk about tonight, which is the Balance box set.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They highlight that, which is crazy. They highlight the opening set for Bon Jovi when they perfectly had a beautiful recorded show from Toronto that they did on pay-per-view back in 95. It was supposed to be released. It didn't. It got shelved because Sammy left the band, and that caused it to be shelved. However, there is a beautiful show from the Balance tour that would have made a great live album and a great DVD or Blu-ray, and that should have been in the box set, but wasn't. And they chose to highlight an opening set, and the worst part of the opening set, Tim, is there's Sam on the set begging the audience to give Van Halen a chance and give Van Halen a chance. They're Van Halen. What are you kidding me? It's like he's an opening band, like a brand new band trying to say, "Oh, come listen to us. I think you'll like us." Get out of here. This is Van Halen.
Yeah,
you know, it was crazy, but there's some wild stuff. And if you
there's so many things that have happened in the Van Halen camp over the years that it's like they go out of their way to do things to test the fans' patience.
It's amazing.
And even when they would do something, there'd be an asterisk with it that would go, what? Why?
Well, I'll give you an example. Perfect example to what you just said. You just talked about the box set, which is called the Collection 2. It's the box set that collects all the Hagar albums. And one thing they did on there that was just unbelievable, they put on a bonus disc, thinking they're throwing us a bone, the fans. Yeah. The other Collection 1, which is the 6 Roth albums, did not have a bonus disc. So they figure, ooh, what's on this bonus disc? Very excited. on the bonus disc,
Yeah.
Apolitical Blues, which they remove from OU812.
Which anybody that bought the CD
Yeah,
had it anyway, or bought the Black and Blue
right,
single.
right. And or
There's
but the
nothing rare about these rarities.
no,
They had
no,
all appeared somewhere.
exactly. But they took it out of the album. Literally, it's if you go on the OU812 CD of the collection 2, it's removed
Yeah,
so they could put it on the bonus disc. They did the same with Balukatherium, which is the instrumental.
yeah.
Okay, that's
That threw
on.
me for a loop because I've always just considered that because by the time Balance came out, I was buying CDs
Yes,
primarily. So it was
yes,
like, wait a minute,
yeah.
well, this is
They
on. This is part of the album.
they threw off the whole like sequencing of that album, which
Yep.
was absolutely wrong to do to the fans. They threw on Humans Being from the Twister soundtrack and Respect the Wind from the Twister soundtrack, which is fine, but Respect the Wind isn't a Van Halen song.
No, it's
You
Eddie and
know,
Alex.
it's Eddie and Alex. That's somewhat crossing over. I
That's
could.
about the one.
That's about the one.
That's
That's
the
about the
one
one.
thing. If
Yeah.
you didn't have like what
Right.
can't stop loving you single,
Right. Right.
then you didn't have that. And then
Exactly.
and then they put the 3 songs that were on the Best of Both Worlds, the
Right.
3 new songs. So
And you know what?
there are no rarities here.
Those aren't rarities. I think for convenience purposes, I could see that and Humans being put on there along with Crossing Over because at least it collects the songs together. And if you're gonna buy the collection too, that kind of finishes off, the Hagar era because at
Well,
least
it's
you have
all the
everything.
Hagar
Yeah.
studio recordings
Right,
that
right.
yeah.
I just
So
don't believe in removing songs from albums to put on a bonus disc. And also, there are extra tracks from leftover from the Ford Lawful Cardinal Knowledge album, which they didn't dig into, and they have I Want Action left over from 5150. I believe the ones on for Lawful Cardinal Knowledge was I think The Wish, and I think was it called maybe You Never Know, or not You Never Know. That's the other Roth song. Something. No, I forgot the name of it, but there are songs, but here's the thing. In order to go in and grab those, you really got to make an effort and a deep dive, and you might have to clean them up and do extra work, which no one wanted to do.
right.
So this was
Yeah.
an easy grab, is what I call it. It's an easy grab. So I was, I listen. Van Halen fans, they make a meal out of crumbs because they give us crumbs. They don't give
Yeah.
us a lot. They're trying to make an effort here.
I happen to have this handy, just to show how not hard it is to make something happen.
Yeah.
So something that came out in 2018, it's another band, but Cinderella.
Yeah.
This is
I
a
have
set
that.
called the
I have that.
Mercury Years. Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
which came out through Caroline Records, which is an independent label. They obviously licensed it for Mercury.
Sure.
So there are 5 discs on here, just like there are with the Van Halen ones.
Right. Right.
Most of these, actually, yeah, almost all of these CDs have extra songs on them because
Wow.
Night Songs has some live tracks.
Right.
It's got a song called Galaxy Blues, which must have been a live jam. The Long Cold Winter has radio edits of a couple of the songs, live bonus tracks. Like it's got there was a B-side of I think Gypsy Road. They did Jumpin'
Yeah.
Jack Flash.
Right.
That's on here. So the stuff can be done. I mean, this is
Yeah,
just
of
a little
course it
tiny
can.
company, right?
Absolutely.
And Van Halen, people that buy the singles know. You buy the Best of Both Worlds 45, it's got a live version from Live Without a Net. So that
Yeah.
exists in audio form.
Of
And
course.
and by the way, instead of the studio rarities, they could have mixed those studio rarities,
Right.
forgot about the 3 songs from 2004 if they'd wanted to, or stuck them
Right.
on the end of Balance,
Right.
but made Live Without a Net
Well,
an audio only. And maybe
yeah.
that's still to come, but I'm
Maybe
just saying
that's yeah. I'm wondering about that. See, first of all, Live Without a Net, in my opinion, should have been released as a DVD, CD, or DVD or Blu-ray.
right.
It should have been a DVD, CD, or a Blu-ray CD set by itself, number one.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that they will include that in a 5150 box set, because if they're going to continue with these box sets, They've done For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. They've done Balance. They half did the live album, but really not really. The funny thing is that they put it out on vinyl remastered, but no extra tracks, no nothing. And there's plenty of tracks left from that tour that they could easily add on as bonus tracks. Didn't do that and did not put it out on CD or on streaming, by the way. So that was a sort of a half-assed effort. I didn't quite understand what that was all about. And they started with that one. That was the weird thing. Then, you get to For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge box set. They put out, the funny thing is they got criticized for the Live Right Here Right Now live album for being too studio cleaned up.
Yeah.
So they put out the Live in Dallas, which is raw as hell.
Yeah.
Which is funny. So, I mean, I give them credit for having the balls to do that. But at least they gave you the Blu-ray of that. It was a unique show.
Yeah.
Very cool visually because it was a live event that took place as a free show. That was nutty. But then you look on the box set and they gave you like weird stuff. Like they give you, right here, right now they gave you the like guitar version, they gave you the organ version, which were two mixes at the time. They were trying to cross over Right Now into like an AC format, and they thought by removing Eddie's guitar solo, can you imagine removing Eddie's guitar solo and putting in an organ solo was now gonna make it okay to be a crossover hit? That was a failed attempt. That was
I had
ridiculous.
the back in the day, I had the cassette single of Right Now, and that was the B-side. And I don't even think, I wouldn't even call it an organ solo, because I think that's just what Eddie's playing in the background.
It's almost like they just amped it up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Weird, like all the way back that far, weird decisions. And not to mention the fact that, they put this out towards the tail end of 2024 as the first of the Van Hagar. They picked the third one from 91.
Yeah.
In its 33rd anniversary.
Yeah, I know.
And then almost as an afterthought, they put this out by itself, which granted, I'm glad they put this out by itself. We get some different cover art.
Right.
And then then of course, yes, we get the very abbreviated Balance.
Right.
But why wouldn't they go in order? I mean, why wouldn't they start with 5150, which is probably, other than, if you get this, is probably the quietest of those CDs, because it came out in 1986. CDs were still relatively new. And you're right, they've got the Live Without a Net home video. It's shot. Now, I was glad they at least put it out on DVD in like 2003, 2004.
Yeah, but it's not on Blu-ray. I mean,
they've never made the leap to Blu-ray, and yet the stuff is there. It's ready to go. But it would be nice to have that in a standalone, nice set. Some, maybe a few songs from other venues other than just the New Haven show.
Right.
And then with OU812.
That was my biggest disappointment.
We know there's that Japan show, which is great and professionally shot.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that comes out.
But we'll see who owns the rights to that. The other thing is, when I got that box set, the collection 2, the first thing I did was open up OU812 and play that in earphones. I was dying to hear a fresh mix of that album. The album was remastered. It was not remixed. It needs to be remixed. The bass is so low in the mix, and the guitar is too high up. It needs to be remixed properly so it sounds like a blended album. If you listen to 5150 and then you go over to OU812 and then you go over to For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, then you go over to Balance, the sounds are all drastically different. I personally think that the sound on Balance is perfect. I mean, it really is unbelievable. Bruce Fairburn.
It's Bruce Fairburn, right?
Incredible with them.
Yeah.
And he also did Humans Being, which is a fantastic song of theirs.
Yeah.
However, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge has a unique sound. Andy Johns really did an interesting job there. Obviously, Ted Templeman producing as well. That has a really cool sound to it as well. However, 5150 sounds very dated.
Yeah.
The electronic drums don't help matters. They make it sound dated. It sounds like a very early 80s album. And the funny thing about Van Halen albums, especially the first 6 Roth albums, they sound fresh as a daisy. And that's
Yeah.
because Ted Templeman recorded them to be that way with Don Landy as his engineer. But, it was Don Landy who was responsible for the sound on OU 812. And in fact, that's probably why they parted ways, because they were not happy with it. But I think that album was rushed, to be honest with you. They put out 5150. They went out on tour. Then they went, and Eddie and Sam went and had to do his contract Sammy
Right.
Hagar album.
Right.
I Never Said Goodbye. They did promotions for that. They had booked the Monsters of Rock
Yeah.
tour, and
That
they
was
had their
coming. Yeah.
backs against the wall. They had to finish that album and get it out by June. And so, there was that, and there was just a lot of weird up and down. Their manager dying, Ed Leffler, unfortunately, really unraveled things, and he was the buffer between Sam and the brothers.
Yeah, that was, I mean, you didn't realize
Yeah,
just how much that, because, yeah, all of a sudden things started to get weird
yeah,
after
yeah,
Ed Leffler died. And I
right.
know, like, I know that the brothers were, when Sammy put out the Unboxed on
Mm-hmm.
Geffen in '94, which to 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 read his side of it says that the label was going to put something on anyway.
Right,
Uh, he said that he was getting divorced from his wife Betsy. Finally,
right,
like
right.
they've been but he wrote 2 new songs, and basically whatever he would have made from those 2 new songs went to alimony payments.
Of course.
So he didn't make a lot off of that, but just the fact that that went gold, I remember, he said
Oh yeah.
he was excited about it, and Eddie and Alex tore a strip off him. And I remember, reading things that just don't make sense. Like they got mad because um, he put like Eagles Fly or There's Only One Way to Rock on Right Here, Right Now, and they're like, we don't make any money off that. Well, guys, you knew those were his songs, and
Well, he offered them.
you let him play them on tour.
Yeah,
You could have left him off the album. So
yeah.
I like that. I
But
never understood
yeah,
that. It's like,
I'll tell you.
how do you think that's gonna work?
I'll tell you what I've decided as an older guy and as a journalist. I started researching this, and I kept saying to myself, it was one thing during the 5150 tour, but if you look through the set list, they're still playing Sammy Hagar songs through the years. And why didn't they just play Van Hagar songs?
Yeah,
So then I said to myself, I realized what it is. There was some deal cut with Ed Leffler that if they play 2 old Van Halen songs, they're going to play 2 old Sammy Hagar songs. There was something going on there because, I mean, if you think about it, Sammy made the 5150 album. He came out with Winner Takes It All, the single that he did from the Over the Top Stallone movie. Then he comes out with his solo album, I Never Said Goodbye. Then he comes out with his greatest hits with 2 new songs. Like, I mean, and Eddie and Alex were all about you're either in the band and that's it or nothing. And then him doing his tequila and the Cabo Wabo brand and all these extra things. They kept thinking like really kind of mooching off our name. That's their attitude. But the bottom line is you brought him in as the lead
yeah,
singer of Van Halen. He did the job. But the weird part about it is, and I've said to Sam, even in my interview, like, you took the job as the lead singer of Van Halen and you don't want to sing Van Halen songs. That's like being hired at McDonald's and saying, you know what? I really don't believe in serving fries. It's like, what are you doing? Like that was part of the job, is that you're going to have to sing Van Halen songs. And he had a big time attitude about it. I remember as a kid going to see the 5150 tour and saying, did they only play 2 old
yeah.
Van
They
Halen
played "Ain't
songs?
Talking About Love" in Panama.
That was it. And I
That,
don't even count You Really Got Me,
well,
because
no,
that's
that's a
not a Van
cover.
Halen song. Right. It's
Yeah,
a cover. Right.
but yeah, I didn't. That really didn't click in with me at the time. I was so into
Right.
the band, and that was
Me
the period I
too.
get
Me
it.
too.
But over
Same
the
thing.
years, it's like that's
Right.
very strange. Like nobody else
Yeah.
could get away with that. Like that would be like Brian Johnson
Right.
going out and saying, "We're just going to do the songs from
No.
Back in Black."
Exactly. Exactly.
You can't
And
do that.
Brian always went out of his way to honor Bon Scott, to play the songs from that era, and even do a tribute to Bon all the time. And, he to this day talks about Bon Scott, and he has outsold Bon Scott and risen far beyond what Bon Scott did with that band. It doesn't matter. He still pays homage to him. So, it's amazing. I mean, Hagar still to this day, he's turning 78 very shortly. He's still angry at Roth. Roth is still angry at him.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
It's a very strange thing, and were it not for Van Halen, they never would have crossed paths.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Speaking, I don't know if you want to get on to the books a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. And I wanted to tell you, looking back and after going through the whole promotion, reading Alex's book several times and everything, I was really kind of disappointed in it because he did some really great work in the book when talking about his parents growing up overseas, coming over here, those early days, and his relationship with Edward. Yes, there it is. But you know what? It's a relatively small book with small pages and big spaces in between.
It ends in 1984. It's not done.
Well, that's because he wanted to smack Sam in the face.
Yeah.
And he Sam's name is not mentioned in the book.
Well, he's in there twice.
Is he in there?
But
oh,
yeah,
that's
he's
right.
in there, but not as a member of Van Halen.
Right,
he would say something about, believe it or not, one of the guys they considered was Sammy Hagar.
Right.
And I remember, like, the fact of the matter is that we already talked about AC/DC. AC/DC and Van Halen almost stand alone.
Right.
As the only rock bands.
Yeah.
Who replaced the face, the sound, the voice of the band,
and got away with it.
Immediately die.
Right.
Because that is almost, it's a death knell.
It's unheard of. Motley Crue tried to do it and they couldn't pull it off, but they looked at AC/DC and Van Halen and said, man, we're in the same vein as them, man, we could do it. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for them.
Well, Van Halen were so, Eddie and Alex, who would say they were sort of like full of themselves. They were convinced that it didn't matter.
Well, because their attitude is we're Van Halen.
Yeah, they could just keep putting in new singers.
It was an ego thing. It was an ego thing. And if you look at the back cover of Balance, if you have Balance there, you got it there.
I got the remastered.
You got the box set. What do you got? Okay, look at that back cover.
Eddie and Al front and center.
And look who's buried in the background: Sam and Mike in half shadow.
Yeah. You can't see all of Sammy's. You can't see Sammy's mouth.
You can't even see his whole face, and it just shows you like we're in charge.
Yeah, you don't. It's funny, like that. Just new Van Halen album. Here's some new pictures in that, and you look back and you go, that was very calculated.
Yeah, and there's a lot of anger in some of those pictures and stuff. I tell you though, Balance is a much better album than most people give it credit for. It is, first of all, it's unbelievably recorded. The way Bruce Fairbairn captured a beautiful, beautiful sound. The box set captures it nice. And, I have to say, it's got some really great stuff on there. There's a lot of album tracks on there that are really incredible. Like, Take Me Back and Aftershock and things like that. Seventh Seal. These are really good songs. And, I always say to make a playlist with just those songs and take away the hits. And what's really, really funny, a really kind of funny, quirky little Van Halen fact is, believe it or not, one of the biggest streamed Van Halen songs of all time is Can't Stop Loving You.
I would never guess that.
It is above, I think, like right now, and Why Can't This Be Love? It's unbelievable. I can't believe that. But it's the truth. It's the numbers from Spotify streaming, and it's amazing.
So that song, it's interesting because, I do a lot of 40 or 30-year countdown shows on the channel, and, going back into 95. Can't Stop Loving You was a top 5 single up here in
Absolutely.
Canada. It peaked at number 30 on Billboard. It was their last top 40 single.
It was a beautiful song. It was a beautiful pop song.
But for what boggles my mind, how did Right Now peak at 55?
Well, because
it's far and away the best known song. One of the, if you say that song to people, probably second only to Why Can't This Be Love, is the most recognizable Van Halen song of that era.
It's like, I'll give Billy Joel as an example. The song Miami 2017, the song Scenes from an Italian Restaurant. These are nowhere near the top chart hits that he has had in the 80s, that were like Tell Her About It, Uptown Girl. But those songs that I just mentioned are bigger because they became fan songs. They became hits through concert and through fans loving them. And that's the thing about it is that it has a legacy and it's lasted longer. It's like, for example, Goodfellas didn't win the Oscar in 1991. Dances with Wolves did, but we're all still watching Goodfellas,
And
and no one's
referencing it.
talking and referencing it and quoting it. And there's
Yeah.
T-shirts and it passed down from generations. And nothing against Dances with Wolves. It's a nice film, but it doesn't have the
Yeah.
legacy. It won the Oscar, doesn't have the legacy that Goodfellas has. So it's amazing what sticks. What sticks, and the thing is that right now has been used in a lot of sporting events.
Yeah.
It's been used in lots of different areas in the sense for commercials and stuff like that. It and the keyboards that riff and obviously the video became iconic. So it lives on in different ways. It just amazing what sticks and what doesn't. But it's the truth. What you said is the absolute truth. And it's funny, Billboard numbers don't always tell the story.
No, because I mean the only top 40 single from For an Awful Carnal Knowledge was Top of the World, hit number
Yeah,
27, and
right.
yet you got to be a pretty big size Van Halen fan to know that song.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you say right now, or you quote it, and people, as soon as that piano comes on, oh
Oh
yeah, I
yeah.
love this song.
Yep.
But maybe it's because the video got so much play that it
Yeah,
sold a lot of albums and
it
people weren't
was.
buying the singles. I don't know.
Yeah.
But another you mentioned Billy Joel. It's
Yeah.
almost funny to think about like Elton John.
Yeah. Hmm.
What's one of his biggest songs from the 70s? Tiny Dancer. Wasn't a top
Yeah.
40 hit.
Again, put in the movie,
Yep.
which was
Almost famous.
almost famous,
Yeah.
in a key scene, one of the
Yep.
best scenes in the movie. It is iconic now, and he can't play a show without playing it.
Yeah.
Getting back to Alex's book, I think they really had the wrong author there. And I'm not saying that because she's a woman. I'm saying that because she's not a rock writer. And
Right.
anybody who's a rock biographer would have dug deeper into the Van Halen history. A lot of the Van Halen history in there, like the band's, the big years, was kind of rehashed using other people's books, which I found really, not was kind of disparaging. And I was a little disappointed in that. And biggest surprise of the book is how well he talked about Roth. He talked
Yeah.
about Roth glowingly in the book, and that was surprising. And really, snubbed Gary, snubbed Sam completely. And that was kind of a weird takeaway from that book. And I think you can tell that this was something where she interviewed him a few times and then wrote that book. I mean, that's not
Because any
writing a
other
book.
journalist would have said, even if it would probably have risked them the job,
Yeah,
to say, you're stopping here.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's so much more history.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? Say, he can say what he wants and think what he wants about Sammy. It
Yeah,
wasn't okay, Eddie is Eddie, the amazing. And Alex, one of the most unique sounding drummers. They had created a sound by the time that
right.
5150 came out.
Sure,
But
sure.
guess what? Uh, you got really, really lucky
Yeah,
because you had a second act that most bands
right.
don't get. The biggest of bands, they changed the lead singer
Oh, yeah.
straight down the tubes.
Yep, yep.
And it doesn't
Absolutely.
matter how big your last album was, if people don't go for it, And so it wasn't just that you replace, you're writing that Eddie's writing the music. You got to have somebody that can deliver it. And Sammy carried them through grunge. Grunge
Absolutely.
killed so many bands of
Absolutely.
their era. Just
Yeah,
killed them, like
absolutely.
knocked them down to club status and indie
Absolutely.
labels.
Yeah,
They're selling nothing less. I think Balance may have been the poorest selling album of the Hagar era at 3 million. It's also 1995, and the entire music business had changed, and they still had a triple platinum album and a number one album. That's
absolutely.
not that's you got very, very lucky. You can make great music, like you mentioned Motley Crue. I think that '94 album they did with John Corabi is a great album.
Are you ready for this? My
Well,
favorite Motley Crue album.
same here. I've
I
called
think
it.
that is an
That
unbelievable
that was a
find.
direction that I wish they'd have gone in, but they've gone
Oh,
completely the other way, and I barely even want to talk about that band these
oh
days.
yeah. Oh, it's
But
amazing.
um, So yeah, I was there were parts of Alex's book I found very interesting, like talking
Yeah.
about how they thought Eddie and Al thought they were doing their dad a favor by letting
Oh
him
yeah.
retire, but it
Yes.
turns out it was the worst thing they could have done for him. I
All the
found stuff like, yeah,
personal
that
stuff
was
was
interesting.
great.
The band stuff, number one, he wasn't saying anything I didn't already knew, and number two,
Right.
he was saying things like, I've read that very differently, or I've read
Yep.
the exact same wording
Right.
somewhere. That's
Yeah.
really, and the whole
Yeah.
snubbing of Sammy Hagar, that just gets old after a while. It's like, you're
Yeah.
really gonna take that to your grave?
He's very
Like,
angry about that, and I think it's because several things. Number one, it's a money thing about the Cabo deal. He feels he was snubbed on the Cabo deal. Number one. Number two, you know, his book, Red, that he put out, he
right.
really reamed Eddie and talked about things that I guess people in bands would say, you don't talk about that. That's a private matter. If your bandmate is struggling with alcoholism to the level of which he was, and it was dark and it was bad, maybe not put whole very descriptive things in there. You're kind of crossing a line with a band member by selling him out. And Sam knows, he's apologized for it.
That's
He
right.
raked Eddie over the coals in that thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that he can be angry
I
about.
think that was in response
Yeah,
to
to
Eddie
Michael
coming out and
Anthony.
saying he
Yeah,
was standing up for
yeah.
Mike when he said
He
that, which
was,
I,
and
and
yeah,
that's not
it's true.
cool either.
But you know what? No one has handled Van Halen brothers with more grace than Michael Anthony.
Oh, and that can't be that cannot have been
Let me tell you something.
an easy thing.
If there's someone who should write a book, it's Michael Anthony. And,
Absolutely, that
and
guy,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he would have stories. But
Oh,
back to the Sammy thing and doing the
yeah,
Cabo and the
yeah.
tequila.
Yeah.
In his defense, I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
It could be he would say they weren't doing anything.
No.
You
Listen,
know,
listen. No, I'm not. I don't blame
oh
Sam for
no,
the
but
Cabo
they're
thing at all.
looking at it as
No,
like,
listen. No, what happened? What happened there was it was kind of sour grapes. So what happened was Sammy wanted the band collectively to be part of Cabo Wabo.
that's
They
yeah,
all wanted their money back and they wanted out of the deal. And then Sammy bought all their shares back, and then it took off.
yeah.
And now they have sour grapes. And then it looks bad. Like all of a sudden, Sammy buys the shares. Now it takes off. So it just looks bad, but I don't think Sammy did anything wrong. I think he was trying to do right by the band. And I just think it happened to take off. And then the tequila took off at the same time and really made Sammy the richest man in Van Halen. And not only is he the richest man in Van Halen, I think he has more money than everybody combined.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
nothing to do with the music thing, right?
no.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so there's that. Now, I just also want to mention a few other books that I think are worthwhile mentioning. Tone Chaser by Steve Rosen, Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen by Brad Tolinsky and Chris Gill. I also think Ed by Zloz, the Neil Zlozauer book. He's the famous photographer. Unchained by Mark Christopher, and then also DLR book by Darren Palchowitz is very, very good about David Lee Roth. There's some great books. And, I also want to mention that when it comes to Van Halen legacy, the fans have been the ones to really secure it.
Yeah.
And for example, Alan Berry put out a 5-part documentary on the 1984 tour and the 1984 whole era. Brilliantly done. Simon Alkin, who is from overseas, did Eddie Van Halen, a musician, another 6-part documentary, Icons Remembered on YouTube. Unbelievable. That someone released the Ted Templeman demos onto YouTube. Someone released the Van Halen Chronicles onto YouTube. We have a guy currently out there who goes under the Music Media Archives on YouTube. He's releasing bootlegs every other day from the 1982 Hide Your Sheep tour, soundboard quality, and it's all for the fans to enjoy. And this is what I say on my podcast all the time. It's not the band that's going to release the stuff that you want. It's the fans that are going out there. They're writing books. They're putting out documentaries. They're releasing bootlegs. They're doing all kinds of stuff to secure the band's legacy. It's part of what we do on the podcast. With
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
and I think it's the fans and their passion is what's going to keep the band's legacy alive, because there's no one else doing it.
Yep.
Wolf doesn't want to do it.
Yep.
Alex doesn't want to do it. no one else is stepping up.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody else really can because I
Yeah,
mean, and Wolf, that's a lot of pressure for
it
Wolf. He's
is. But
he's
at the
already taken a
listen,
lot of,
listen.
he's
I
but
think I also think listen, it's not a criticism against Wolf. I happen to love Mammoth. I love every album. I go out and see them on tour whenever they play. I'm all for him not playing Van Halen music and doing his own music. I'm all for it. Part of me says I think there's a little bit of responsibility. If you get
yeah,
left with 5150 and you get left with you're the only son, you're the only child
yeah,
in the family. I would feel just personally, this me personally, he can do whatever he wants, and I'm not trying to make fun of him, but I would feel a sense. I would do my Mammoth thing, do the music tour. I would not play Van Halen, so I get all of that.
yeah.
But I would think that I would at least hire a team
Hmm.
to do archival material. I'd work with Al and be releasing Van Halen material just because I think there's a sense of a responsibility. I'm not saying he has to release all the stuff that's in 5150. Maybe people don't, maybe Eddie didn't want people to hear that stuff. And maybe it's just demos and he feels like embarrassed that it's not up to the quality that we're used to hearing. But there's live stuff, there's all kinds of bonus
All
things
kinds of live
that
stuff. Yeah.
I would hire an archival team to scour through this stuff that I would employ, and I'd be putting out box sets like Metallica does with each release.
Oh yeah.
Those guys, they know how to feed their fans. Not only does Metallica put out a box set, they'll start releasing a whole merch line based on that era, and will do all kinds of stuff to promote it. That's the way to handle a legacy. If someone, Metallica, who's busy as hell making new albums, touring, they still find the time to do the box sets because they probably hire a team to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think Lars and James are doing all this
No,
work.
they'd have to sign off on it,
Yeah,
or they'd have to have the final say.
I'm
But
sure.
but somebody would come to them and say, "This is what we have in mind. This is the framework for it. What do you think?"
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
There's one other book I want to mention, and
Yeah.
the guy I know personally, Martin Popoff,
Yes. Oh, of
Van
course.
Halen at
I'm
50.
sorry. No,
This
I
is a
want. Yeah,
great,
Martin
yeah,
Popoff has a
yeah,
great book.
yeah,
That book is phenomenal. It's like 190 some odd pages, beautiful photos. He did an excellent
yeah.
job with the timeline and laying it all out. That is a fantastic book. He also put out for the hardcores. Okay, I want to mention this from my friend Martin here. We have his ad on every issue we put out, every episode we put out. Also, he has a book for I would call the Van Halen hardcores. Unchained, a Van Halen user's manual.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Excellent book. It's a reader book. It's not as visual. That's a very beautiful, laid out, glossy style book. And that is also well worth it. But he has that one as well. And also a visual guide. He
yeah.
had a Van Halen visual guide, which is more pictures and stuff. All three of those are worthwhile getting.
And yeah, see, I never got around to getting those other two, but I got the Van
Oh, you
Halen at
got to
50,
get them.
and I
Those
had
are,
him. I had
yeah.
him on to talk about them, and he even said, doing that, you do run into you run out of stuff to talk about that's officially released after a while.
Yeah.
That
Well,
you
of
have to
course.
make
He knows that.
everything a milestone moment.
Right.
The release of their first live album, which
Right.
is kind of I could take or leave, but
Right.
it's
Right.
got to be mentioned, right?
It's
Um,
true.
so yeah, you're absolutely right. The problem is that YouTube and the music companies are so quick to take things down
Yeah, I
or
know.
issue copyright strikes. So it would just be and yet I think if you asked most fans, they would say, "Look, I'm watching this on here."
Right. Of course.
Because you can't
And,
get this stuff no more, or you
yeah,
never
exactly.
could get you never could get it officially. And if there was an official version, I'd be the first in line to order it.
And the smart ones just lean in and monetize it. And
Yeah.
that's the best way to handle it. Listen, the bottom line is it's 2025. We live in a different era. This kinds of stuff only helps the Van Halen brand.
Yep.
It's not going to hurt it.
You
It's like
yeah.
all those tribute bands out there. They are all commercials. They're
Yep.
keeping the bands, they're keeping the music alive. For example, Romeo Delight, Completely Unchained, Jump, and all these different bands that are out there trying. Bottoms Up is another one. My friend Jim Von Voss, he has Halen CT in Connecticut. He's actually playing this weekend. All kinds of Van Halen tribute bands. These guys, Van Halen, fantastic.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Don't forget Nerd Halen.
Nerd Halen, oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, they'll kill me. Nerd Halen, of course. These guys are unbelievable. But this, having bootlegs out there, videos out there, tribute bands, books, this is what's going to make the legacy. Not the organ version of right now.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. And everybody has to know this. You will be forgotten. Time will forget the biggest of artists. There will come a day when people will not be talking about Elvis Presley anymore.
Right, I know. Well, that's the thing.
But so it's up to the fans.
Right. But Elvis at least has curated his legacy.
Right.
They have curated the legacy of Elvis. They have curated the Beatles' legacy. They've curated Led Zeppelin's legacy. And you know what? I say to Van Halen, if Al ever hears this or whatever, you always followed the steps of Led Zeppelin. This is a perfect example of following Jimmy Page's steps, because Jimmy went out of his way to do everything. Gave us the BBC sessions. He gave us the Zeppelin box set, several Zeppelin box sets. He gave us How the West Was Won. He gave us all kinds of extended versions of each album. I mean, that's the way to do it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no reason why Van Halen can't.
No.
And it would take a very minimal amount of work, because, like you said, hire a team. There would be people that would be just dying to get in there and say, I know exactly. Well, I have a vision on what would make an excellent package to come out. And
listen, Brian Kehoe was a man who was hired to make a Van Halen 1 box set, finished the whole thing, and they put it on a shelf. They wouldn't sign off on it. And it's not that. And Eddie Trunk heard the whole thing and said it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And yet it hasn't come out.
But a lot of it, so many songs.
Yeah.
That have never, from those earliest days, that have never, like, a lot of them were reworked for a different kind of truth, but not all of them.
Yep, exactly. They went back to those old songs to try to get the flavor going. That was Wolfgang's idea, to try to go back.
And probably to get an album out, right? Because if Dave and Eddie had to sit and write an entire new album, it would probably have never come out.
Well, I think it was really to grease the wheels.
Yeah.
Because it's like, let's get a starter going. Let's not start at A, let's start at F. Yeah. And we'll go from there. You know what I mean? Like, let's get a little bit of motion going. Let's rework She's the Woman. That's an easy. And by the way, She's the Woman, had that been the lead single of A Different Kind of Truth, that would have been a whole other story.
I think so. Yeah. Tattoo grew on me, but when I first heard it,
I love Tattoo. But She's the Woman screams Van Halen.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I just remember listening to it, when I got the album, and it gets to that midsection, and I laughed because I knew they had to change it, because they originally used that part from the middle of Mean Street. And that was the part, that was the fun of the education of listening to that. Like, okay, well, what did they keep? What did they,
All right.
Because what was the song? Voodoo Queen was one of those songs that they had to take parts out of.
I think part of Voodoo Queen is in Tattoo.
Yeah.
And we actually did an entire episode where we traced the DNA of A Different Kind of Truth. I think we did it for one of the anniversaries. Let's see. I think we did it for the 10th anniversary of A Different Kind of Truth or something, where we traced the DNA of the songs from A Different Kind of Truth and told you where they came from and paired it and showed you next. It was a lot of work, but we did that, and that's out there on our podcast. You can check that out. It's probably from like 3 years ago, but it was really worth doing, and a lot of people got a kick out of that. And, A Different Kind of Truth, unbelievable album. I really think it was a phenomenal record that really should have been heralded more, was not promoted properly. It should not have been on Interscope Records. That was ridiculous.
There is the reason why that original vinyl of A Different Kind of Truth is one of the most expensive albums in my collection. It needs reissued.
Absolutely.
It needs reissued badly.
And just to show you how things have gone forgone in the Van Halen camp, 2 of their albums at different periods disappeared from streaming because they didn't sign contracts.
That's just not minding the store,
That's not minding the store. You're not even handling the most basic of things. So you're going to take away the studio albums that exist. We only have 12 of them. And
Yeah.
you're going to they have like over 40 years together and only 12 albums.
Not the most prolific, that's for sure.
Not the
Yeah.
most prolific. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're phenomenal albums, but
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, there should be a lot more than that. And it's just unfortunate. A lot of lost years. Eddie was sick. Eddie got divorced. Eddie had alcoholism. There was a lot of stuff mishmashed in there. The flipping around of lead singers. And, Eddie was crushed after
Yeah.
Van Halen 3 flopped.
Yeah.
And, it went gold, which is fine, but like it crushed him. It
Yeah.
broke his heart, really. I mean,
Yeah.
it really did. And really, this guy came from nothing but platinum. Nothing but platinum.
Yeah.
Everything was platinum. I mean, like he was a very wealthy young man at a young age. Like
Yeah.
he became wealthy in success and wealthy in talent and wealthy in wealth. But I just unfortunately, when you're so used to first class, it's hard to go back to coach.
Well, there was never, first three albums sold like, 300,000-400,000 copies.
Yeah.
Then they had a gold record. It wasn't like that. They started off
Yeah,
out of shot from a
came
rocket.
bursting out the gate because they were together for many years. When they opened for Black Sabbath, they were not some like little upstart band. That band was a eating machine. They hit that stage. People don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah.
They ate Black Sabbath for breakfast.
Yeah.
And Tony Iommi says it with us.
I think all four of the original Sabbath guys have said it.
Yeah.
We knew we were done that night.
There's a video of Van Halen leaving the stage and the lights coming on, waiting for Black Sabbath to come on, and the crowd starts chanting for Van Halen. Have you ever seen that ever?
For an opening act.
For an opening act. Unbelievable. Yeah.
So hopefully the future we'll see more of these.
Very curious. I am very curious.
Yeah.
To see if there is going to be a 5150 box set and an OU812 box set. I would not be surprised if they don't do them and they stop at these two because Van Halen has no continuity and they don't follow through.
No, there's no rhyme or reason to the decisions that are made to put the albums out when they did. I mean, at least they put Balance out in its 30th year.
Oh, yeah.
Next year would be the year to do 5150's 40th.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't always happen. And it's not just Van Halen that stopped doing that. There's been lots of like 39 year and 29 year, and that drives me up the wall. But
absolutely.
But you know what? So far, Van Halen music of both of the eras I still hear it all the time on classic rock radio. So it's still kept alive. But like you said, for any band to rest and people will never forget about us, they will. You need to keep something out. You need to keep things coming out in the pipeline, and you need to have a plan in place that after you're gone, every few years or so, guess what? Remember this, remember that.
Absolutely.
So we'll see. All right,
absolutely.
So Dave, I want to thank you for coming on here and talking about 5 years without the King, without Eddie Van Halen.
I know.
And there's been some great stuff come out, and we've bought it, we've honored it. We just as fans, we think it just could have been better, but who knows? Who knows what we might get? We might get a lot, a live series of things. I don't know. I mean, as just as a really quick aside, earlier this year, Rush put out their 50th anniversary box set, and it included the first two songs that made up their very first independent 45.
Wow.
Not Fade Away, which is a Buddy Holly cover, and then another original called Can't Fight It. I personally never thought those would ever come out on CD.
Wow.
But they did. So who knows? So So folks,
absolutely. I mean, and I have to say, I really hope that I would love to hear. Mike said he has a tape of the day Sammy Hagar came in and jammed with them. First day. And he said it's brilliant. Can you imagine that on the 5150 box set?
See, it should be. And here's the thing. Most bands do.
Yeah.
Most bands do that because they know the fans will eat it up.
And there's a whole album called Van Halen 4. That's not necessarily the name. We call it Van Halen 4. It's the second album with Gary. It's a demo, so it's not polished, produced, but it's complete. So
I'd
it's
like
like
to hear.
full songs.
I want to
Love
hear
to
it.
hear it. Love
I
to hear
want
it.
to hear
And
it.
Eddie Trunk has heard it and
Yeah.
said it's way better than Van Halen 3. Tell me that wouldn't make a great box set for Van Halen 3.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
And then there's the songs that the supposed reunion in 2000
Okay,
with
some of
Dave
those,
that there
right.
was like
Some
four
okay.
songs they
Some of
did.
those songs, or most of those songs, are on A Different Kind of Truth,
Okay.
but they have Mike. So
Yes.
that's interesting. That
Yeah.
would be interesting to hear.
So
Those Different Kind of Truth songs with Mike.
yeah. Which
So
yeah.
yeah.
Dave, thank you so much for doing this.
Happy to do it.
We could talk Van Halen all night, but and if
Absolutely.
you want to hear more Van Halen talk, do not forget to subscribe to Dave and Dave Unchained Van Halen podcast, and yeah, make sure you do that. And I want to thank everybody for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions, and in whatever era Van Halen you're honoring, go listen to some Van Halen today in honor of Eddie Van Halen, and we'll see you all later on Tim's
Absolutely.
Vinyl Confessions.
Long live the king.